Hey everybody, thanks for joining me. It's the Elysabeth Alfano Show, the only plant-based radio show in the nation. I am recording today from the gorgeous and beautiful Santa Barbara Four Seasons. We're back with Dan Buettner, founder of Blue Zones.
Yeah, we flattened off and we're headed towards a country where 50% of us are obese. And that's because what we eat. We're the capacity of the human machine. So everybody listening out there right now, if you do everything right and you have an average set of genes, you should make it into your mid-90s. And life expectancy here is more like 80. So we're leaving 13 to 14 years of life expectancy on the table that we could be getting, and those would be good years. A lot of people say, I don't want to live that long. But the reality is, the longer you've lived, the healthier you've been. So going towards 100, I can put that another way too. The cohort of people who die in their 60s suffer about 8 to 9 years of disability called morbidity. The cohort of people who die at 100, they only suffer about 9 months of morbidity.
So that was going to be another question I was going to ask you, because Blue Zones, the Blue Zone Kitchens, it's 100 recipes to live to 100. And originally, before talking to Dan, I was like, do I really want to live to 100? Is that your goal, Dan? You want to live to 100?
I wouldn't say it's a goal, but I probably am on a path. So right now, as I said before, the best you can expect given an average set of genes is about 92 or 93 for a male, maybe 95 for a female. But since 1840, life expectancy for humans has gone up 2 years per decade. So given that I'm middle-aged, I should have 4 more decades left. I should get 8 bonus years on top of my 92. So making it to 100, I think, is realistic for me.
This is the goal. You're talking like an athlete. Like you're in the range. You're shooting for it.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's not keep people waiting. Let's talk about, first of all, the cities that, because when you started looking into the Blue Zones, there were already 3 established cities, I think, that were living the longest around the world and were sort of established Blue Zones. And you went ahead and found 2 more. Is that right?
Well, actually, when I started, there were no established Blue Zones. There was a paper in a Journal of Experimental Gerontology that referenced an area in Sardinia that these scientists were calling this one area a Blue Zone. Nobody knew about it. But I had the idea of taking the term and applying it. I went into the scientific literature, and I found this place, Okinawa, that had the highest concentration of women over 60 that made it to 100, and then Loma Linda, California, among the Adventists, where people are living about 7 or 8 years longer. And I basically named them as a Blue Zone and wrote a cover story for National Geographic about those 3 places. The idea was to find the common denominators that explain longevity in those 3 places. That book was a big hit. The magazine article was a big hit. So then I hired demographers to go out and look for more Blue Zones. And we found Costa Rica, the Nicoya Peninsula, and then finally the island of Ikaria, Greece. And all those places, people are not only living a long time, but they're staying healthy into their 90s and even hundreds in some cases. And remarkably, in Ikaria, they suffer about 1/10 the rate of dementia that we do here in the United States. So they're not only their bodies are not only healthy, but their minds stay sharp till the end, which is what we want.
Yeah, and this is a huge concern for people. As Dr. Ornish has talked about, perhaps reversing Alzheimer's. This is very new research, not well established yet, with plant-based diet. But there's more and more Alzheimer's, as I understand it, coming to us at an earlier age even, and I know it's a big concern for people. So you're saying that people are living not just physically healthy, but mentally they're staying sharp.
In Blue Zones. Meanwhile, in the United States, in the last 20 years or so, the rate of dementia has almost doubled. So and it's just so clear that heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, many types of cancer, especially cancers of the digestive tract, diabetes, dementia, they all have a root cause in what we're eating. Ultra-processed foods, meaty, sweetie, crappy food. As we eat more and more of it, we get sicker and sicker, but we don't want to acknowledge it.
And the frustrating thing here is it is totally within our control. A lot of people say, well, it's genetics, or, these things just happen and we don't know how, but actually we really do. And it's all in our control, and we have the ability to reverse it.
Yes, I mean theoretically it's in our control, but you go to for enlightened people like you and the people you have on your guests on your program. But if you're a single mother living in Iowa and you're supposed to go into the community and make the healthy choice for your family, if you haven't been educated, 97 out of 100 choices that you're confronted with are bad.
Yes.
They have convenience stores and Shopko and Burger King and Pizza Hut and Godfather's, and it's almost impossible to find healthy plant-based food, whole, that's not ultra processed too. So, if this is going to be disruptive, but if you're overweight in this country, it's probably not your fault.
Yes, I know what you're saying, that there is a social injustice component to it, that you have been marketed to such an extreme that there's no way out of it for you if you are in certain parts of the country. Would you say that this is intentional from the government?
No, it is a byproduct of over-innovation. And until 1960, there weren't enough calories to feed every American. And Earl Butz, who was Nixon's Secretary of Agriculture, he's the guy who created this system that favors corn and wheat and soybeans and sugar beets, and the sort of distribution system to make those cheap and ubiquitous. And then it's marketing companies. It's American ingenuity that take those cheap inputs. They turn them into Frosted Flakes or Wieners or they feed them to animals and turn them into Wieners and hamburgers, and then they spend marketing dollars and they create a huge profit. And it's not a conspiracy, but it's more like that old experiment. If you throw a frog into boiling water, it will leap out. If you throw a frog in lukewarm water and turn up the water 1 degree at a time, it'll just become complacent and die. That's what's happening to us in America. In 1980, there was a third the rate of obesity that we have right now. There was about a seventh the rate of diabetes. And that's not because people were more enlightened back then, or they had more discipline, or they had better diet plans. It's because the food environment was very different then.
Right, and exercise was different as well. I think people were moving around more.
Perhaps. I think it's mostly food.
Just straight diet. Okay, so let's talk about the diet habits of those in the Blue Zones countries, those that live the longest. I was surprised to find that there's some alcohol in there. So let's go over the list of stuff.
Rats.
Yeah, or good. You never know. And coffee was in there. I was surprised about that one as well. So of course I knew that meat wouldn't be in it and dairy wouldn't be in it. But let's talk about the list.
Yes. So the idea behind the Blue Zone Kitchen was to find an average of what people were eating for the last 100 years in all 5 Blue Zones. And to do that, we had to find dietary surveys that went back to the 20s.
Oh, wow.
Because if you want to know what a centenarian ate to live to be 100, you have to know what she was eating when she was a little girl and a teenager and newly married and middle-aged and newly retired. So you can't just ask a 100-year-old, what are you eating? Because they don't remember. So on average, people are eating 90 to 95% plant-based. And the 5 pillars of every longevity diet in the world are whole grains. This sort of shocks the anti-gluten crowd because you clearly see wheat in the Mediterranean Blue Zones, corn in the Latin American Blue Zones, and rice in the Asian Blue Zones. Greens of all kinds.
Sure.
The greens that we'd weed whack from our backyard, they're making beautiful salads and pies out of them. Tubers, potatoes, but especially sweet potatoes.
And the skins of sweet potatoes.
Yes, purple sweet potatoes in Okinawa, known as imo, which is about 60% of their dietary intake till about 1970. And then nuts of every kind. And then the cornerstone of every longevity diet in the world is beans. If you're eating about a cup of beans a day, it's probably worth about 4 extra years of life expectancy.